Today we have Dr. Radhya Saha ma'am, currently working as an assistant professor Ashutosh College, University of Calcutta. Ma'am is a passionate teacher and researcher with a proven record of linguistic
research interest as well. I'm interested in pedagogic practices and innovative pedagogic practices, not only for proficiency development, majorly for proficiency development, but I also want to look at how these practices can be used interdisciplinarily in multiple disciplines. So this is what I usually do. But when I was asked to speak here, the issue that I felt was I don't know a lot of law. Okay. So I do know pedagogy, and I am extremely keen on exploring how these practices can be implemented in law. Sincere request that please make it as interactive as possible. Uh, I am not going to lecture to you. That is exactly what I cannot do, what I'm incapable of doing. So I'm going to keep it an open-ended presentation, and we are going to try and create some knowledge here together. Okay. So while I am speaking, you can always, drop in your comments. And I don't know, let me just see when I'm presenting, if I can see your comment, I'll just present and I'll check. And if not, then you can just unmute and talk, because I need you to talk. I need you to be a part of this presentation. So I'll just see how this works. Let me know if you can see my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
To just write something in the chat. That is my issue. I don't think I can see the chat when I'm presenting. Yeah, I'll just see the chat. Yeah, just please write something on the chat. I want to see if it's visible. I don't think it is. I don't think, I can see whatever you're writing. So which means that, you don't have to answer me on the chat. Please unmute and answer. Please do that, okay? I really need you to, thank you, hello, good afternoon. I really need you to unmute and answer. so that we can make it interactive. All right. So just don't bother about whether you are talking simultaneously or not. If it's like that, then we can manage it. We are all adults, but please unmute and answer. Okay, feel free to talk. We are going to do this presentation together. I'm not doing it alone, and I need your help because I don't know law. So I know pedagogy, you know law. We are going to construct pedagogy for law together. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to do really. All right, so let me quickly begin then. So this is the title of my presentation: Co-creating knowledge, critical andragogy in the law classroom. Now, through this presentation, what I want to do with you is exactly what my presentation title says: co-creating knowledge. So I am not giving you knowledge. It's not a one-way street. We are going to create knowledge together here. Okay, and let's see how this goes. Now, we understand what is co-creating knowledge. So we are building knowledge together. But there are two important terms here that I want to draw your attention to: critical and andragogy. And I'm going to take you through each of these terms individually. So first of all, do you know what is andragogy? Anyone? You could just unmute and answer. Have you ever come across this term andragogy? Just tell me. Anyone? Andragogy?
Ma'am, if I'm
If you
not
could unmute.
wrong, it is the art of teaching the adults.
Yeah, it's the art of teaching the adults. Yeah. So what is pedagogy? Pedagogy is basically the art of teaching. It's the art of teaching children. And yes, bang on, andragogy is the art of teaching adults, the art and science of teaching adults. So now you tell me, you think and tell me, what do you think should be the primary differences between pedagogy and andragogy? Peda, so if you look at the word peda, it comes from that Greek prefix, pedo. So basically the same thing that you find in pediatric. So peda, that relates to children, okay? And gaji is basically the art, the act of leading. It's equal lead karna. So you are leading children, pedagogy. Andragogy, you are basically, so andra is basically man or humans, okay? And gaji, leading. So you are leading human beings. So when you are into pedagogy, you are leading children. When you are into andragogy, you are leading human beings, you're leading adults. So that's the idea. But could you tell me what would be the central point of difference between pedagogy and andragogy? What do you think would be the differences? Or do you think teaching children would be the same as teaching adults? Tell me. What do you think? Just unmute and speak.
Hi, this is Dr. Shivani.
Yeah.
I suppose pedagogy is concerned, since it is children, it is more of a one-way communication where we'll make more effort in whether they are able to understand. When it comes to andragogy, it always has to be a two-way communication because uh, the same thing can have different kind of interpretation when it comes to two adults. Keeping in mind the different kind of atmosphere, keeping in mind the different kind of situation in one what is supposing to be, the same thing can have different meanings.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else? How do you look at the difference between teaching children and teaching adults? Are you going to use the same techniques? What are you going to do? All right. So we are going to explore this further, and I'll push each of you to speak. I want each of you to speak. I won't push you to speak, but I'll encourage you to speak. So the idea is, when you look at pedagogy, see there's this teacher, and then there are these unidirectional arrows, right? So knowledge is going from the teacher to the students. Though nowadays this is also very debated because बच्चे भी सोच सकते हैं. It is not like children can't think, and you just have to fill in their mind. Key, this is this, this is this. It's not like that even for children. But then children come with less experiences of the world. But when it comes to adults, they come with a lot of experience anyway. So you don't need to, feed them information. You don't need to feed them knowledge. What you can do is you can, give them some topics to think about, certain ideas to ponder about, and then they can, also give their own interpretations of those ideas. They can discuss amongst themselves, they can discuss with you, and together you can construct knowledge. That's the entire idea, because adults can be self-driven. Adults can be far more self-driven than children are. So this idea of andragogy was, this term was first used in 1833, okay, by a German educator called Alexander Campbell. Now, this term, however, became extremely popular in the pedagogic scenario when this American educator Knowles used the same terminology, andragogy, for his theory of learning. All right, for his theory of adults learning. So Knowles practically identifies 5 basic assumptions that distinguish adult learning from learning of children. Okay, so what are these? The first is self-concept. This one. So self-concept is, so basically a child looks for direction. A child looks for guidance. An adult doesn't need direction. You can need direction, but you can move on your own, right? So an adult looks at himself or herself as an independent, self-thinking entity. So the self-concept changes. As an adult, you don't think that you're a baby who needs hand-holding. You think that I am capable of thinking for myself. Secondly, adult learner experience. So you come with a lot of experience, which you can put to the interpretation of learning, to understanding stuff. So it's not like, you come with zero knowledge and you are being told something day one. So you come with your own background experience. Third is the readiness to learn. Okay, so an adult is always more ready to learn stuff that they think would help them do better in their own social roles. So see, as a child, when a child gets into school, a child is into school, just because a child should be into school, because its parents pushed it into school, and the child is, having fun, learning, playing, doing this and that, reading subjects, all of that. Now, the child is doing it simply because the child knows that ये करना चाहिए, बच्चों को अच्छे बच्चों को पढ़ाई करनी चाहिए, ठीक है? But an adult doesn't study because अच्छे adults को पढ़ाई करनी चाहिए. That's not the idea. They study because an adult studies law because he or she wants to be a lawyer. An adult studies medicine because he or she wants to be a doctor. So they are ready to learn, to equip themselves in the particular social roles where they see themselves, right? Then comes orientation to learning. Orientation to learning is basically how an adult and a child perceives the need for learning. Okay? So a child thinks that learning is something that I am doing, and later in my life I'm going to implement this in my actions. But an adult thinks that if I'm learning, I need to instantly try this out and implement this. So which is why, in adult courses you have internship and this and that, because an adult has an immediate need to act, to try it out, instant need to act on it. So the orientation to learning is different. And finally, the motivation to learn is also very different. Why? Because, see, children are given chocolates and this and that, and they want to go to class for that, okay? They are told कि अच्छा class जाओगे तो खेलने को मिलेगा. You will get to do this and that, you will have fun in class. So they want to go to class. See, you have all of these midday meals and all of these for, motivating children to go to school. So for children, the motivation can be external. But we can put in external things to lure them to the classroom. But you cannot tell an adult कि बेटा तुम कॉलेज में क्लास में आके बैठ जा, I'm going to give you खिचड़ी to eat. No one will be interested. No one wants to go to an adult classroom for food, okay, for chocolates, for etc. etc. So you cannot give external motivation to an adult. It has to be internal, you understand? So the adult will only come to class if the adult feels, okay, if I do this class, I'm going to benefit out of it. It's going to make me better at the social role that I want to ace. So the motivation to learn changes from being external, it becomes internal. So from extrinsic, the motivation becomes intrinsic. These are some of the major facets of adult learning, which Knowles says distinguish adult learning from child's learning. So andragogy from pedagogy. Now, if we are, so I'm again back to this slide. Okay, if we are talking about learning for law, we know that this doesn't happen at the school level really. So the students that we are getting, that you are getting in law, are essentially adults, right? Because they are 18 plus, which is simple. So so in law, I think the right thing to pitch here would be andragogy. See, pedagogy is a very old term. It is being used since centuries, since the Greek times, right? So pedagogy has been in vogue. So when you say critical pedagogy or pedagogy for law, it also means andragogy. But nowadays we have this term which specifically relates to the needs of adult learners, which is why I have used it in my presentation, particularly because in your context you are getting adult learners. Now, if we are through this particular word, andragogy, I want to take you through to the next very important word in my presentation, which is critical. Now, my open question once again. What is critical? What do you understand by the word critical? When you say theory versus critical theory, what's the difference? Studies versus critical studies, what's the difference? Analysis versus critical analysis, what's the difference? Can you tell me what is this critical? What do you think is critical? Tell me. Hello. What's my audience? What do you think is critical?
Am I the one who is supposed to take the initiative again? Well, on behalf of everyone, I suppose. Analysis can be one-way analysis. Analysis can be depending upon my thought process. I may feel something is good, so I may only analyze it as good. But when we analyze something critically, we have to take both sides. What is positive about it? What is negative about it? Including the gaps. That is what is critical according to me.
The rest of you, thank you, Shivani. So the rest of you, if you are not willing to talk, can you please make me your friend on the chat? Can you write something on the chat? It's going to work with me. I have literally put down my presentation so that I can hear you out. What is critical? Come on. Could you tell me what is critical? I know it is a post-lunch session, but am I being so boring? What is critical? No one? Oh my God. So, all right. So, what really is critical? So, if you look at, once again, with criticism, I think is a negative term, you know why? Because when you criticize someone, you look at the negative aspects of it. Critical, I think, is more about critiquing, CRITIQUE, critique, and not criticize as the verb, right? Why? Because it's something where you look deeply into it, and yes, you reveal the positives and the negatives, right? That part is, of course, there, as Shivani said. Let me just take you back to my picture, and what do you gain out of this picture? Just tell me, the rest of you, what is happening in this picture? Can you see what's happening here? There's a plank, and then there's this king on one side, and then the rest on the other, and the plank is still tilted to the side of the king, right? So what really is happening here is an imbalance of power. What's happening here is basically an imbalance of power. Are you able to see my PPT? I hope. Yeah, you're able to see my PPT. So what's really happening here is an imbalance of power, you see. Why? Because in society as such, there is a lot of power imbalance. Not everyone has same amount of power, right? There is always the powerful and always the powerless. So when you talk about critical, this word basically comes from a very Marxist perspective. So critical is something which is sensitive to the power hegemonies and imbalances of power in the society. That's the idea of critical. Something which is sensitive to imbalances in power, hegemonic relationships. So the idea that someone dominates and someone is being dominated. So that is, the kind of inequality that critical studies explore. Okay. So when you say critical andragogy, when I'm trying to say critical andragogy, it means it's an art and science of teaching which is sensitive to the imbalances of power in the society, to the imbalances of power around us. Okay. So let me just give you a very quick example. So one way you can look at power imbalance in the society, or let's say in the classroom context, is the power imbalance between a teacher and a student. A teacher is placed, at a higher pedestal at the level of God, which is what we call the God effect of a teacher, right? And the student is placed at a lower pedestal. So there is also a power imbalance there to begin with. There are many other power imbalances that critical pedagogy addresses, and in law you can address many more as well. I'll come to those. But this is the one very basic imbalance that you can see, that there is an imbalance between the teacher and the student's position of power. So if you look at this picture, this single king here can be the teacher. Okay. And all the students on the other side still are not as powerful as the teacher. Okay. Still it's heavy on the side of the teacher. So how then do we apply critical andragogy to our classrooms? That is what I'm trying to get through in this session. Now, look at this picture and tell me what's happening here. So this is my question to you. Everyone, so I'm not asking you theoretical stuff. I'm just asking you to please unmute and interpret the picture. What's happening? यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है इस picture में? Can you see what is happening? Just describe to me what is happening in this picture. Anyone, please. Can you describe to me what's happening? Can you see the picture? Is it visible? Is it okay? Can you see? So see, there's a kind of pump. Okay, there's a kind of pump here. Petrol pump की तरह, जहाँ पे education लिखा हुआ है instead of petrol. And there's this guy who is basically putting in that educational petrol into the head of another guy. What's happening here? Tell me, what did you see here? What do you understand through what you saw? So there is a petrol pump and there's this person who is pouring in the petrol of education into another person's head. What happened? What happened in this picture? Can you tell me?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. It's like buying a degree. That's happening with lots of private universities, institutions emerging into the field of education, and that is what my idea of understanding that picture.
It's you felt that it's like buying a degree. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I was just talking about it. Yeah, that can be one interpretation. The way I was looking at it is basically, yes, from the perspective of a classroom. Yeah, spoon feeding, you can say. Yes, Dr. Shona says spoon feeding. Yeah, kind of. Why? Because what is happening is in the classroom, so the teacher is basically this petrol pump wala. Okay, what we are doing is we have knowledge. So that education is there with us. We have vomiting my knowledge. Now you have to intake it and you have to again vomit students here, you're my listeners, but this is something that students do, right? They are usually passive. They don't want to talk. Why? Because we are acculturized into not talking. Ever since childhood, we have always seen this. Ki we are not supposed to be talking. Yeah, Gang Mei, Gab, you've raised your hand. Tell me. Tell me, is there something that you want to share? I think that was by mistake. Never mind. So the idea is, you are acculturized. As a student, we are all acculturized into not talking. We are acculturized to be silent objects, receiving education. That is. So this particular dumping concept is what is being, no worries. It's what is being, critiqued in critical andragogy or critical pedagogy for that matter. So what really is happening here is what Paulo Freire, a Brazilian educator, okay, who is practically the father of critical pedagogy. He calls it pedagogy of the oppressed, and I'm calling it critical andragogy. Nonetheless, it's the same thing. So he's literally considered the father of this discipline. And Paulo Freire critiques this particular style of learning. He says that this style of learning may be known as the banking system of education. Banking मतलब जैसे हम बैंक में जाके अपना पूरा सब कुछ पैसा वैसा जमा करके आ जाते हैं, ठीक है? So like that, it's this that the teacher is going to the student and depositing his knowledge. Like the student is a bank. You're depositing your knowledge, and then the student is supposed to preserve that knowledge. So the student is not a collector of knowledge. The student is a human being, right? So this is what Freire is trying to critique in his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed, and he says that this cannot help develop thinking individuals. This will only develop clones of people who have knowledge. But you will come to think of it, in today's days of ChatGPT and AI, if you just ChatGPT one question, you're going to get the entire knowledge. What is the point of dumping knowledge into a person? Because usse nahi chahiye. Even if that person doesn't have the knowledge, he or she is instantly going to ChatGPT and get the entire knowledge. So you don't need to do that. We as educators don't need to do that. What we need to do is to inculcate the qualities that separates human intelligence from artificial intelligence, the qualities of thinking, of critical analysis, the qualities to be able to think for your own self. And this system of education is definitely not one which helps inculcate this quality. So, what Paulo Freire suggests instead, is that instead of dumping knowledge into your students, take them through a process of problem posing and problem solving. So don't dump knowledge onto them. Just give them a problem to solve. Let them have a discussion. Let them have a healthy discussion in groups, in the entire classroom. Okay, so what you do is you just give them a problem and ask them, what do you think about it? How can you go about it? Right? And then ask them to, take down basic points, what they think. Give them certain basic literacy points that they need to know. Maybe, certain terms that they need to know to discuss that concept and whatever. So you do that. Let them discuss with their partners, whoever they're sitting with. Let them have a class dialogue with everyone around, okay? And through the dialogue, when everyone is talking, everyone is co-creating knowledge, more problems will come up. Let them ponder on those, take down their own notes. So till now, what you are doing is you are not lecturing. The entire idea is you go to the class and you don't keep the class dynamics the way it is. You make it into a group discussion dynamics, but you are also a participant. You let them think and hustle with the problem on their own. All right, and then you generate peer group discussion. You generate class dialogue, and then when all of that dialogue is generated, then as a teacher you give them some key reading materials. You give them some kind of lecture on the theories that are already prevalent, but don't give that to them point blank. It's not like, hi, today I'm going to talk about this and these are the theories and this. Instead of that, let them hustle with the entire thing. Let them think critically for themselves, and then After they, come through that entire process, then maybe you give them your readings, your knowledge. And that knowledge should not be something that they cannot contest. I have seen a lot of teachers who get anxious when, students kind of ask them questions. They don't want to be questioned a lot. There are teachers who don't want contradictions. But then the entire idea of critical andragogy is that you have to tolerate, you have to encourage contradictions. Because see, these are adults. If you don't let them contradict you, तभी उनके मन में अगर रहेगा तो वो रहेगा. You can't take it out. So why not let them have an open discussion with you, where some knowledge is not fixed in stone, it's not written in stone. If they are contradicting, they have the right to critique any established theorist, to say what they want to say. You can have a healthy discussion with them, and through the discussion, you can come to solutions. That's the entire idea of problem posing pedagogy, okay, or andragogy for that matter. That you ask them, you give them supporting material, you give them help, but you let them engage with the issue and then come to their own solutions, and if necessary, take actions on them. Okay, so I'll give you an example from law itself, and this is not an example that I know because, of course, I don't teach law. This is an example that I've picked up from a page by the University of Colorado. Okay, so they were writing about critical legal pedagogy, and I found this very interesting example where they said that the teacher decided to go to the class and teach the theory of contract. All right. So one way to do it non-critically is basically you go to the class, you tell them, of course, they know what is a contract, and then you tell them that there was a subcontract, and then there came this objective theory of contract, and now this objective theory of contract has undergone so and so modification. Or the other way to do it is, so they gave this particular problem to the class. Okay, I'm going to give you the problem, and you are going to tell me how to take it through a critical andragogic perspective. Okay, I'm going to give you the problem. So what happened in this particular case was that this case was given, right, that there was this illiterate French black-skinned person, okay, who signed as the guarantor of a loan, all right, that his son-in-law was taking from a loaning company. Now, when the son-in-law could not pay that loan, the company, the loaning company, took this guarantor, okay, this guy Skinner, to the court and, trialed him. So basically they said that you were the guarantor. So he was illiterate. So he told them, so they just, illiterate people could place an X mark, okay, for their agreement. So he had placed his X mark to become the guarantor. So he had let them place his X mark to become the guarantor. And so this company said that, see, you had agreed to be the guarantor. You had said that you had, basically agreed to the contract. Now, because your son-in-law is not paying the loan, you have to make amends for this. So you will be trialed. You have to pay for it. That was the entire idea. Now, what happened was, when this court was first, when this case was first trialed, the district court let the black-skinned person go. Why? Because they said that even though the black-skinned person, okay, he had, given his X mark there, still he did it by mistake. He did not know what being a guarantor was. He was illiterate. He had no idea of what was happening. Okay. So the district court said that he cannot be penalized for this. He had made that contract, but by mistake. But when they went to the appellate court said that no, since he was a part of the contract, he has to pay for it. He will be penalized for it. Now, can you tell me, as teachers of law, how you can take this case study? You will take this case study to the classroom, let's say, and you narrate it to your students Now, how can you use it to help them critically think and learn about contracts? Can you tell me what you can do as teachers of law? Instead of telling them, ki, see, this is the subjective theory, this is the objective theory, and according to this theory, this happens, according to that theory, that happens. What can you do? Can you tell me what can be done? Anyone? How to inspire your students to think for themselves? Anyone? Volunteer, it's fine. There's no right or wrong. It's all about thinking. So just think and tell me. What can you do?
Ma'am,
Yeah.
maybe incorporating activities along with the lectures, giving them an idea and asking them like their thoughts on it, just like what you're doing now. That way, I guess.
Yeah, so you know what you can do. So what these people did at Colorado University was basically they went ahead and gave this case study to their students. And see, case studies are given in the legal classroom. We all know that. But what happens is, instead of that being a proper Socratic dialogue, because when you talk about Socratic dialogue, it has to be a dialogue where both the parties are freely encouraged to participate without fearing any contradiction. But our students fear contradiction. They don't feel free enough to participate. So, that is what you have to try to inculcate really. So, you give them this case study and then you tell them something like, what do you think? Is this black person at fault? Should he be penalized? What do you think? So, when you ask this question, different students can have different opinions. You bring all of that opinion into the classroom, and it's important that you take opinion from various minorities. It's from everyone. Everyone should be represented. Why? Because if you are, let's say, if you're just taking this question to a student who comes from a very wealthy, upper class, urban household, he or she might not even understand that, okay, this can be a legit issue. This can be a very big issue that someone might just give into something without even understanding, without even having an iota of idea of what it is. Someone can get into a contract. So you need to take that person's perspective, but you also need to take the perspective of the child who is coming from an underprivileged background, of the not the child, let's say, sorry, the student who is coming from an underprivileged background. The perspective too, so that they can tell you that yes, this is possible, this can happen. And then through the discussion, you can tell them that yes, that's what you're saying, that kind of this person may not be penalized because it's true that he did not understand. So this is what the subjective theory of contract dealt with. It said that yes, if both the parties do not have a matching of minds, if their minds are not into the contract entirely, then the contract doesn't stand valid. But later on, the subjective theory was, changed, and then it was converted to the objective theory, which started being followed. And the objective theory said that as long as a third objective person and third objective viewer feels that the contract is valid, the contract has been legitimately signed, the contract is legit. So if you look at the objective theory, then yes, this black-skinned, illiterate French person should be penalized. So this also helps your students see that the objective theory came later, okay? But it does have drawbacks. It's not like knowledge is foolproof. There cannot be any contradiction. This is it. That's not the idea. It helps them see that there can be a lot of drawbacks. And in fact, which is why over the years, the objective theory has been revised to include this clause of honest mistake. A person may be into a contract through an honest mistake. And in that case, if that honest mistake can be proven that it was by mistake, he or she will not be penalized in that way. So that thing has happened over years of revision of law. So it really shows your students that it is all right to question power hierarchies, to question established law, to question established theories. Because why not? Because nothing is absolute. So it helps build that kind of critical thinking while also giving them the theory. And you know what? Because I believe I am very interested in neuro leadership and all of this also. This is something I've read actually over the years, that if you engage, okay, emotionally and critically with something, it goes to your long-term memory much easily. Dump knowledge on you, it goes to your short-term memory. But if I let you critically engage and think and involve with a particular idea, it goes to your long-term memory. So this can not only help your students think better, but it will also help your students retain better, right? So that's what I was trying to get through at this point. Now, so this is what Fryer says. He says that we need to move from banking to problem posing. Now, Ira Shore is basically an educator who works on Fryer's principles of critical pedagogy, critical andragogy, and she takes these principles directly to the classroom. Okay, Fryer keeps it a little open-ended. Ira Shore literally gives you exact tips of how to take it to the classroom. And Shore gives us certain crucial values of critical andragogy in the classroom. What are these? Shore says, so this is a work of 1992, okay? Fryer was writing in 1968, Shore is writing in 1992. So it's basically a development of the theory and it's taking it to the classroom. So Shore says that firstly, it must be participatory. So it should be what you are not making it at this juncture with me. Very few of you are participating. It shouldn't be that. Everyone should be participating, okay? So the teacher and the student have did not be, restricted only to classroom, but also, there are places where the student, so you can take a blueprint of the syllabus to the class and then let your students see what they really want to learn. They may not want to study everything. Certain topics may be such that they just don't like it. Certain topics may be such that they think that, yeah, this is perfect. I absolutely want to learn more about it. So let them kind of co-create the syllabus a little with you. I know we are all into the system of universities and all. So we understand that the syllabus is fixed for most of us. For me, particularly, it is extremely rigid in Calcutta University. So we don't have an iota of space to shift. But what I do is, I ask my students, we have a 20 marks tutorial, 15-20 marks. So in that I ask them कि बेटा क्या करना है, because उसमें थोड़ा सा हम लोगों के पास liberty रहता है, ठीक है, whether you want to do group discussion, whether you want to do presentation, if you are doing a term paper, what are the areas in which you can do a term paper, उतना लिखा नहीं होता है, उतना space हम लोगों को छोड़ दिया जाता है टीचर लोगों को, ठीक है. So I give that space to my students. I tell them कि बेटा क्या करना चाहते हो in this evaluation. So let them also select some modes of evaluation. Even staying within your system, if you can let them co-create the syllabus, co-create the modes of evaluation, co-create knowledge with you in the classroom, they will be more interested to learn, because they will be active partners in learning rather than passive recipients of learning. It makes it more democratic and very, very participatory that way. And for people who are working in unitary universities, I know that you have greater freedom than I do, at least in a university like Kolkata. So you get to alter your syllabus a little, which is amazing. So let your students also do that. So something that I did, I'll give you an example. So our university prescribes us 2 alternate courses, okay, in a particular semester. But it's not there in all the semesters, but in one semester we have this option of courses, either course A or course B. So initially the department decided that we are going to offer course A to the students. Now, when I was teaching this course, I saw that the students were pretty angry. They didn't like it. It was not something that they wanted to do. They were asked to do lots of script writing for TV, radio, this and that, and they were not liking it. It was not something that a person could do in that small span of a time. You know, the evaluation for this exam, for this particular paper, was sit down exam. How can a person sit down in 3 hours and write a script for a drama, for a movie, for a serial? It's impossible. So the students were like, "हमें ये नहीं पढ़ना है. We want to do the other one." So that time, that was a choice I had. You know, the department decided on course A, but I knew that university will also allow me to offer course B. So I asked my students, why don't you guys write a letter? Okay, why don't you write a letter, and a letter with which we can convince the college authority that in our college we want to offer course B instead of course A in this semester. I don't want to do that course because my students don't want to do it. So they wanted to do course B, which had, you know, newspaper reporting and all of these areas. So they were more interested in that. They felt it was more handy. So I let them write. So, you know, it has to be participatory. And then I took it to the college authorities, and then the course actually got changed. So what does it do to your students? It makes them feel extremely empowered. It makes them feel that they are in charge of their learning, and that is exactly what adults need to do to actually absorb learning. So it has to be very participatory. It has to be democratic, where the teacher is not at a higher position, but at par with others. You know, most of these critical pedagogues tell you, don't structure your classroom in that way, where you sit on the chair of a teacher, and then there's a bench, a table in between, and your students are on the other side. ये नहीं करना है. You make it into a group discussion setup. You make the classroom setup round and all, okay, by rearranging the chairs. Now let me tell you my problem in my context. We don't have classroom chairs, okay? We just have benches. All right. So what I do at times is that one thing that I always do is, till date, in my 8 years of teaching experience, I have never sat on the seat of the teacher. I have never ever done that. What I do is I usually stand. If I can't stand, I take the chair on another side and sit, but I never make that distinction, you know, कि chair, uske baad ye table hai, this table is something which is distinguishing the two parties, me the powerful, my students the powerless. So I never let that table be in between us. And a lot of times what I do is, वो benches में हम लोग ऐसे घूम फिर के बैठ जाते हैं, we sit, you know, ऐसे पैर fold करके हम लोग एक group discussion की तरह बैठ जाते हैं class में. We do that also. So, you know, I don't have all the resources to make my classroom like a foreign classroom where I have all the chair tables which can be moved around so easily. Fine. But I have the intention to try and do something which I believe in. So I think that is what I'm trying to tell you here, because we are all colleagues and we understand that we are bound by guidelines. हम लोगों के पास एक syllabus है, syllabus time में खत्म करना है, assessment करना है. You will tell me कि भाई हम class में जाकर अगर contract ऐसे सीधे करा देंगे, it's only 20 minutes. If you are telling me to go discuss, and last में lecture देने के लिए, it's going to be 1 hour. I can't find the time. I have a syllabus to complete. My point is, I understand you have a syllabus to complete, but within that space also, you know, if you can't make every class like this, at least make some classes practice critical thinking is all that I'm trying to tell you at this juncture. So it should be participatory, it should be democratic, it should be researching. So you consider yourself as a researcher and as a researcher. No one is a teacher, no one is a student. You are all, I am also a teacher student, my student is also a student teacher. We are all teaching each other, and we are all researchers. We are all creating knowledge through practice. Knowledge is there in theory, but we are recreating knowledge in praxis. So we are researching. Let the class be extremely interdisciplinary, in the sense that when you tell a student, okay, see, in this example, this French illiterate French dark-skinned man is wrong because he did not read the contract. What you do is you kind of, you know, you tell this child, you tell the student that no, this is something that cannot be helped. You tell the student that it's kind of a deficit of the French man. But instead of that, you really need to let them bring their own interdisciplinary selves, because law is not divorced from society, from politics, right? So let them think from their own backgrounds, from their own cultural experiences. Let them tell you ki nahi, the French man is not at fault. And then you show them how law can accommodate it. And if law cannot accommodate it at this point, what can they do? Can they write somewhere Can they do some awareness campaign? What can they do? What activism can they do to actually ensure that kind of equality? Right. So you encourage that also. When I ask my students to write that letter to the college, what I was trying to do is actually to promote some kind of activism where they are owning up their own learning. They are taking responsibility for their own learning. So once they do it, they become active partners in the process of learning. Okay. We are not their guardians. We are their friends. We are their partners. Then again, it must be dialogic. Dialogic basically means that, it's not a one-way traffic. Teachers and students have to be conversing together and then coming with solutions. It has to be affective. So affective is something which involves emotions. Whatever they're studying in the classroom cannot be something which is detached from their emotions. Okay, so they have to be passionate about it. Otherwise, how are they going to argue? Otherwise, how are they going to co-create knowledge, right? So it has to be effective. It has to be in a problem-solving vein, which I already discussed. It has to be situated in their environment. Let them give you examples. Let them draw from their understanding, from their experiences in their own cultures, in their own backgrounds. So it has to be dialogic. I already spoke about. Desocializing. Desocializing basically doesn't mean taking the student out from society. It basically means that ever since childhood, a student is taught to be quiet. That is our socialization. हमें पता है कि चुप रहना है, टीचर बोलने वाला है या बोलने वाली है, हमें चुप रहना है. That socializing has to be undone. You have to encourage your student कि नहीं चुप नहीं रहना है, बात करनी है. You have to co-create knowledge. So you have to undo that socialization that has been happening for years. If you really want to try critical andragogy, you have to be letting democratic conversations happening, letting research happening. You have to respect your students, consider them as researchers, and consider yourself as researchers in the co-creation of knowledge. Let the class be interdisciplinary and promote activism if it's possible. Activism doesn't mean कि झंडा लेके बाहर निकल जाना है. The idea is let them be active agents of change in whatever way, by awareness campaigns, by writing something, whatever be it. Let them be activists of change. Now, I spoke a lot about, how a critical andragogic classroom should look. But then you might give me the obvious question, but बच्चों को बात कैसे करवाए? How to generate a discussion? Okay. So these are the three kinds of topics that can help you generate a classroom discussion. Okay. Generative themes are basically themes which students usually talk about, chat about. Okay. So let's say voting, this and that. This is in their common parlance. So आपको पता है कि अगर इन टॉपिक्स पे बात करने बोलो तो बच्चा बोलेगा, ठीक है? So बच्चा नहीं है वो. I'm constantly saying that because it's my habit to call my students children. So the student is going to speak if you give them that kind of a theme. So let them talk about things that they usually talk about. That's a generative theme. Themes to generate discussion. Let them talk about voting rights. Let them talk about let's say rights for the rainbow community. Let them talk about things in vogue that they want to talk about, that they want to try. It's fine. Other kind of topics, you can let them talk about topical themes. Topical themes are basically themes which they know about, but usually they don't talk about that in amongst themselves. It's not very much in vogue. So let's say something like the bombings at Gaza. So पता है सबको कि कुछ हो रहा है. You can highlight that because they already know about it. It's a topic they're familiar with. But they don't talk about it a lot. You can encourage them to talk about it. It can generate very healthy discussions, okay? And you can also encourage them to talk about it outside the classroom with their peers. So these are topical things. Now the most difficult one to do via dialogue is academic themes. And you will tell me कि syllabus में तो यही है academic topics. इसको कैसे पढ़ाए dialogue के via? So the example is the one that I gave you, contract wala theory ka. You can share very many examples with me as teachers. I'm sure you all are wonderful teachers and you can come up with a lot of your own ideas. So while academic themes are a little difficult to pitch using dialogue, they are not impossible. There is actually nothing that cannot be pitched through dialogue. Okay, you just as a teacher have to give it a little thought and your students are going to bloom. And once they get into the habit of co-creating knowledge, there's no turning back. They're going to absolutely love the process. Now, summing up really, if you look at critical andragogy, how exactly are you then implementing it in your classroom? How exactly can you implement it in your classroom? Firstly, by providing agency. Agency is basically the right to, voice one's opinion. So provide agency to your students. Let them talk for themselves. Let them analyze power relationships. Let them critique. Let them contradict. Let them criticize. Let them agree. Let them think about their syllabus and what they want to study and what they don't. Let them choose their modes of evaluation. Let them take learning at their own pace and according to their own choice. So that is the kind of agency I'm talking about. Social justice is basically when you're ensuring that no one is left behind in your classroom. There can be weak learners, there can be silent learners, there can be learners who are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds. If people don't talk to them a lot, if they don't represent themselves, you make a conscious effort to, ask them to represent themselves. You make a conscious effort to maybe talk to them outside the class. Is there a problem? Why are you not speaking up? Is there something that I can do with you? This is something I do in my classes. If I see a child too quiet, I actually ask them, can I, go for coffee with you? Maybe you can speak to me there. And I understand that it's not always possible to do that, but at least you can talk to them outside the classroom. It is very possible. And you will see the change that a student who doesn't speak up at all becomes a student who wants to speak up. Because once you remove that affective filter of the student, you encourage the student that this is a safe space. They just need that assurance. And then learning is going to bloom. So social justice is something you have to ensure. And power and privilege is something you need to be conscious about, and you need to make your students conscious about. So the idea that there are powerful people and there are people who don't have power, and there are imbalances in society. As a teacher, you too have a position of power which you should try and navigate so that you can be at par with your students, so that they look at you as partners and not as a god who cannot be contradicted. Okay, so all of this you have to navigate, and I'll give you a very solid example of sensitizing students to the ideas of power and privilege in law. Okay, so something like so there is a whole branch of law, I'm sure most of you are familiar with, which is critical legal theories, right? Which is something I also personally take an interest in. So critical legal theories, as we know, are basically a branch of law which and jurisprudence which talks about how law is made by people in power, right? And it is written by people in power for people in power to benefit the people in power, right? So something like the law that so when the British came to India, okay, they said that when they colonized us, they said that we are lawless, we are backdated, we are blah blah blah. But we had our own Nyaya Shastra, we had our own law books, but the British decided which is actual law. Okay, and they told us you have to take this law. This is for you. So who made the law? The privileged people, the people in power. Who benefited from that law? The people in power, right? So I'll give you a very, very simple example from a very sociological perspective, not a legal perspective that much. So let's say I don't know about other communities, but amongst Bengalis, okay, when we have when someone dies, this rituals of death, जो श्राद्ध वाले काम होते हैं, वो हमारे यहाँ ब्राह्मण 7 दिन में करते हैं. They do it in 7 days. Other castes do it in 14 to 15 days. The Sudras do it in 30 days. 30 दिन उनका वो चलता है, ठीक है? The complete mourning period. Who decided कि उनका 7 दिन में हो जाएगा, इनका 14 दिन में, इनका 30 दिन में? Who decided? The Brahmins did. Why? Because they had the power to decide. They were the powerful. So if the Brahmins wrote the law, who will they write the law for? For themselves. So ऐसा ही होगा ना? So the entire idea is, while you are teaching law to your students, it is definitely not a bad idea to equip them to critique the very same law and to understand that there are a lot of power dynamics which are implicit in the framing of this law, right? So you as a teacher being aware of your own power and privilege and making your students aware of power and privilege relationships in society, so that as agents of change they can put in their bit to making the society a better place. Okay, this is what critical andragogy is about, that students with teachers co-create knowledge through critical thinking, and the classroom becomes student-centric rather than teacher-centric. So this is a quick summary of how critical andragogy can change your classroom. So from one-sided lectures to exciting classroom dialogues, non-interactive students to extremely active participation, from typical sit-down boring exams to engaging modes of assessment that your students can choose. You can just tell them, what do you want to do? GD, a group discussion, a moot court. You want to do, let's say something like PowerPoint presentation. You want to go on a field trip and study something. What is it that you want to do? If the college permits you, look into the factors. See, I understand we work within constraints, but then as a teacher, if you're really eager, you will be able to bring about some change. Making the classroom student-centric rather than teacher-dominated, and also shifting from passive intake of knowledge for students to a co-creation of knowledge through critical thinking. So this is, how you can apply what I did today in your classrooms. And actually, this is not it. You tell me how you can apply these concepts to your classroom, because you're all teachers. You can give me examples from your own experiences, from your own teaching modules, from whatever subjects you teach. If you could, so I'd end here by asking you that if you have understood this, if I could, of course you've understood this, you are all teachers. If I could inspire you to use this, could you just give me a quick example of how you can use what we did today in any module of your class, how you can implement it in your classroom? Just a quick example, if it's possible. Is it possible for you to give me a quick example? Can you just tell me, anyone, if I have made any sense? Can you just tell me? Shivani, yes.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Riddhi. That was a fulfilling lecture. As far as what I can make out, maybe a few of them, especially from the law field, they can relate to it. Like I have been teaching IPC, that is the Indian Penal Code, since the last couple of years. So what we have been doing is, like, while teaching one of the concepts, that is murder, most popular as far as IPC is concerned, we put them an example. Okay? But never complete the example. Give them a story, but always leave out a few flaws in the story so that the student can apply mind that if that could have happened in it, then the offense would be different. But if the things would be different, then the offense could be different. So one aspect can lead him to think in many ways that something can make it a different offense.
Amazing, yeah. So see, that's how you can do it. What about the rest of you? Can you please pitch in anything from whichever area you teach? Quick examples of how you can implement it in your classrooms. Anyone? Please, could you give me examples? You could even write out the examples, because since I'm here, I can see what you're writing. Ruby, say if we can make students take. One or two, we can help them take responsibility for their own learning. Yes, some sort of learning can actually be a critical pedagogic move. Yes, true. It'll help them think. So anything that really helps them think and critique and not take for Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nice. So anything that will really help them think, critique, and not take for granted, whatever is being given to them. Because as adults, if you're given stuff to take for granted, you anyway don't take it. So instead, if you're, allowed to play with it and allowed to really interact with it, engage with it, then once it fits into your schemata, into your mental representation of knowledge, it's, much easier to retain, and also it helps you become thinkers, which is critical thinkers, which is what is going to distinguish you from AIs in the long run. Right? Anyone else? Anyone? Any other example that you would want to share with me? I'll come back to your examples. Let me just wait. So I just wanted to thank you for listening to me. And since I made this slide, I showed this to you. I have found this picture from online. So I really liked it. I wanted you to see this. And this is something I need you to see. In case you want to reach out to me, this is my mail ID. Okay, this is my official mail ID, riddhi.shaha@ashkushcollege.in. Remember that there's that H after R, and there is no H in ASU. So it's not ASHU, it's ASU. So this is my mail ID. And just in case you want to know about readings in critical legal theories, or I'm sure critical legal theory readings you might be knowing, but because it's my area of interest also, I can share some with you, like with your conveners if you want. And if you want to read about pedagogy of the oppressed, Paulo Freire's book, I can share that. I can share the PDF of that. I have the PDF. I can share PDFs of some books on critical legal theories, and I can share the PDF of Ida Shor's Empowering Education, where he literally talks about, how critical andragogy can be taken to the classroom. Okay, so I can do that. In case you're interested, you let me know. So I'll share that with your conveners. Pragya says, I just give them some portion and tell them to take class and usually discuss with them different life situation. Yeah. So yeah, which is what we usually do, right? And in law classrooms, so definitely do you let them discuss with you. Just make sure that the discussion is such that usually क्या होता है, हम लोग situation देखे, we ask them to discuss, and then no, I'm not saying you do it. I'm very sure that you don't do it. You let them have a healthy conversation. But I have seen a couple of teachers. So क्या होता है? It's not their fault. Actually, now we are pressed for time, so we let them discuss. I sometimes myself make this mistake. Discussion के लिए बोलते हैं, and then I see कि अच्छा 10 minute हो गया, so I just start lecturing after that because I know कि I have this huge burden of syllabus. So if we can give them a little more time, so that their critical skills are enhanced more. So yes, and definitely discussion is the way to go. Yes, yeah. Anyone else? If you would want to share something, or if you would want to ask me something, or if you would want to give me some feedback, whatever be it, you could let me know. And if the moderators are here, then I am kind of done until and unless I have comments or feedback or questions.
Thank you, ma'am. I guess it was more of a fulfilling session. No one is having any doubt or queries regarding it. And by the time I saw it on my screen in your topic, I just instantly Googled it. And then you have explained it so well that now it's all clear. You have explained the topic difference between the pedagogy and andragogy very well, and the critical andragogy obviously, and all the concepts regarding that petrol pumps, educational petrol pump concept, or the power imbalance in the classroom. All these concepts are explained us very well. Plus, it also explained us how we can restrain ourselves from being just a chat GPT to our students in a classroom. And thank you so much. We all will meet in the next session tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Samiksha. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks to the participants too. Bye. Can I log out?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.